Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another one of my Dota 2 hero guides. Today we're going to be taking a look at Nyx Assassin. Before we jump into the video, I just wanted to say if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things, it really helps. And if you want to see more content into the future, please consider clicking the Patreon link down below and going to my Patreon, signing up for coaching, or just supporting me in general for that $5 or $10 a month. It really helps because for whatever reason, YouTube has not monetized my channel, so I make absolutely no money for making all this content. So in order to keep up making content in the future, if you guys really like it and you want to see more of it, please consider supporting if you can. Now that we got that out of the way, let's jump back to the video. So Nyx Assassin is a 4-position hero, pretty much only a 4-position hero at this point. I know a lot of supports can either play 4 or 5, but really there are some heroes that really only play 4, and it's usually because of one of two things. The first is that they really require items to be good. They need some kind of gold. They need items to be good. And so usually they're going to be 4 position rather than 5 because the 4 usually gets more farm than the 5. The other main reason that some heroes are only played 4 position is that their laning stage is just not that great. They don't offer all that much. So that's why they need to be paired with a strong offlaner, somebody that can kind of hold their own and only needs a little bit of assistance. Whereas if they were in the safe lane as the 5 position with a weak safe laner, they would just not contribute all that much, and then they would lose the lane. So that's why Nyx Assassin usually isn't a 5. He could still play it. It's still possible if you have a strong safe laner and things like that, or the lane isn't going to be that bad. But he's usually played as a 4 position because his laning stage isn't really that good. Now, he does use items pretty well, but he just doesn't need the items. His spells and his innate abilities are really good. He just doesn't offer a ton in the lane. He's not like a super tanky hero. He's decently tanky. He has good regen and things like that, but he just doesn't like right click very hard. It's not like an ogre. He doesn't have a lot of HP. He doesn't right click super hard. He doesn't have a fast attack animation or anything like that. So it's not like he's trading super well. His spells also really scale very well, but early on they're not that great. It's just like a small stun here and there. It's just he can be elusive. He's kind of hard to bring down, but he doesn't really offer that much offensive potential or zoning potential all that much. You know, once he uses one of his abilities, his stun ability, it's kind of like, okay, well, he doesn't really do anything from here. So it's pretty much what he does is he does the typical stuff of like pulling, contesting pulls, all this normal stuff in the lane, kind of like an Earthshaker might be, or any other kind of melee hero that's in the 4 position. So that's mainly why he plays 4, although he could play 5, it's just not usually ideal. So that's how you can think of him and why he only plays 4. He also doesn't really play like mid or 3 position or anything like that because he doesn't scale enough with items to actually make it really worth it. If you had like a really core Nyx Assassin, it just wouldn't feel good. He doesn't really have any way to farm either, so you're sort of just wasting that position on this hero. So that's what Nyx Assassin plays. That's the position that he plays and what he does in the laning stage. But then what do you think about him, or how do you think about him when he transitions into the mid game, into the later portion of the game? Well, the number one way, the main way to think about Nyx Assassin is that he is a vision and a ganking hero. What he does, his main role, is basically to scout out the enemy, find where vision is, find where the enemy is, and then either gank them, like if they're trying to split push, they're alone, whatever, you can kind of pick them off with one other hero. You can sometimes even pick them off yourself if you're really snowballing really well, even from the 4 position. Or you can kind of set up around the Roach Pit, you can set up in the jungle, you can do whatever, scout out the enemy heroes to see where they are so that you can take a very good team fight. So he's one of these good vision heroes, like a Night Stalker or any other kind of vision hero, like a Beastmaster that gives vision. He just plays the vision game, which is really good in kind of competitive level, high level Dota, anywhere or any team fights where vision is very important. He's very good at that. He's also very good at ganking people. So he acts almost like a Slark in the sense that, you know, when Slark's off map, you have to be kind of careful, especially if he has a Shadow Blade. You can't really venture out alone or too far away from a tower because Slark can just kill you. Well, it's the same kind of thing with Nyx Assassin. If you don't know where Nyx Assassin is, you know he has his ultimate up, it's very hard to just go out on the map alone, especially if you're a support, because you can just easily get picked off. So that's kind of the main way that you can think about Nyx Assassin, but he also has 2 other kind of small ways that you can think about him. One is that he's a counter to uncontrollable damage. And so what do I mean by that? It's kind of a unique concept. Well, what I mean by that is kind of any AoE spell, any spell that the enemy casts in kind of a direction or on a specific spot on the ground or anywhere where they kind of just cast a spell to do damage, but they can't really control who it hits other than just where they're casting it. So basically any AoE spell, anything like a channeled ultimate, like Snapfire ultimate, Witch Doctor ultimate, anything like Storm Spirit Q, Remnant, anything like any Lina spell, like Lina's stun or Lina's the fire that she throws out, any kind of AoE stun, any kind of AoE damage, anything like that you can't really just target one person at a specific time. It's more just on the ground. And the reason for that is Nyx has an ability, which we'll look at in a second, that allows you to stun people when you take damage from their abilities. So basically what'll happen is, or even the right clicks, but basically what happens is you can kind of walk in to the area that you know that they're going to cast their ability, you know that they're going to use their AoE damage ability, and then instead of actually, you know, them comboing somebody or killing somebody, they actually stun themselves. So it's very hard to play those kinds of heroes against the Nyx Assassin because you don't necessarily want to use your full combo. You don't know really how to use them or when to use them. You have to be very careful when you use your abilities because you could just actually stun yourself, set yourself up for a, you know, chain stun and those kinds of things to kill yourself if you use your abilities. So that's one of the ways you can think about him. And then the other way is he's very much an anti-intelligence hero. He's anti like high mana pool. They don't necessarily have to be an intelligence hero, but any hero that has a high int gain, high mana pool, relies on mana for some reason, he's very, very good against those kinds of heroes. So Storm Spirit, a lot of other core intelligence heroes. Even Medusa is another one that, you know, he's pretty good against Medusa because of the mana pool, those kinds of things. And we'll take a look at that when we look at the abilities in a second, but those are the two other ways that you can think of Nyx. So the first way, vision, scouting, ganking, those kinds of things, almost like a Slark, you can think about him. And then the other two minor ways that are also really important is kind of anti-intelligence and also or very good against uncontrollable damage from the enemy team. So that's how to think about Nyx Assassin. Now let's jump into his abilities and see how they work. So now that we understand Nyx Assassin in general, we can take a look at his abilities and see how he's able to do all those different things that I talked about earlier. So first we're going to take a look at his pretty much basic stun spell, Impale. This is very similar to the Lion stun. Lion's, actually, what is that? Earth Spike, I believe. It's very similar. It actually looks almost exactly the same. And so you just use it in a direction, and a bunch of spikes come out in the ground in a line, and it stuns everything on its path. Now, there is a difference between this spell and the Lion spell. The Lion spell, you can actually click on an enemy, and it will target that enemy, and it will kind of direct it towards that enemy. Now, there are some weird stuff where it can miss, and there's other weird things that, like, you can click it on the ground, it has a further range, all that stuff. But Nyx Assassin's Impale spell doesn't work that way. You actually can't click it on the enemy, so you just have to aim it. So it is a little bit of a skill shot. You can't just like easily just go in and say, okay, well, I'm going to stun this guy. You click the guy, and then it happens. Because if he's moving, you actually have to aim it. So you see, you know, let's just have the axe go here. I do actually have to kind of aim it in the direction, because if axe is, let's say axe is moving, and I just click on axe there, I'm going to miss the axe. You see how I clicked on the axe, but it was a little bit behind him, and then it just missed the axe because he kept walking. So it is a spell that you do have to aim, so keep that in mind. And that's actually going to be relevant when I talk about his ultimate a little bit later, so keep that in mind. But otherwise, you know, it has an AoE, it has a line. You can stun multiple heroes in that line, so it's not like you only stun one hero or anything like that. You can still stun multiple heroes, like you see both of them are stunned in the line. It does damage, and it stuns for a good amount of time. It's a pretty decent stun. So that's Impale. Next, we're going to look at Mana Burn. Mana Burn, this is the ability that allows him to be that anti-intelligence hero, anti-mana pool hero, like I talked about. And really, it's pretty simple and straightforward. You just use it on an enemy, and it does damage based on their mana pool and basically how much they have. So here it says destroys the hero's mana equal to a multiplier of its intelligence and deals damage equal to the mana burned. So basically it's based on its intelligence, so high intelligence usually means high mana pool. They're kind of roughly the same, and so then it does damage based on that, and also removes the mana. So something like Medusa is very good because Medusa has a high mana pool and also relies on the mana to, like, you know, sustain, because it's part of her health as well. So this hero is really, really good against a hero like Medusa. It's also good against a hero like Storm Spirit because he has a very high mana pool. He doesn't have a ton of health. Like, he needs to build health to be relatively tankier because he's usually generally squishy, so you can do a ton of damage to heroes like that. Even heroes like Silencer, you can do a ton of damage to heroes with this spell. Now, obviously, if you use it on Axe here, you see it doesn't do a ton of damage to Axe, and that's because Axe is a strength hero with a low intelligence and mana pool and these kinds of things, so it's really not that great against him, but it still can be annoying. You can still burn a lot of people's mana in fights, has a relatively low cooldown, decent damage. It's just a pretty good overall spell. It just adds a little bit of extra stuff if you don't have a great hero that it's used against. But that's Mana Burn. Just a little good, a little spell that's pretty good all around. Next, we have Spiked Carapace. So Spiked Carapace is the other ability that I talked about. That's that anti-uncontrollable AoE damage that I talked about earlier. And basically what you do with this ability is you pretty much press it and then spikes come out of you. So you can see there the spikes come out for a brief period of time. It doesn't really last that long, but you can press it pretty much whenever you want. And then the next instance of damage that happens to you from an enemy stuns them. So what happens is, if I do this and then the axe attacks me, you can see there that the axe is now stunned, and it stuns for a decent duration. Usually what can happen is, you use this, they get stunned, then you can follow up with your impale. Then, your allies can follow up with other stuns as well. And it's a very, very good stun. It's a pretty long duration, can be very annoying later in the game. Now, keep in mind, it does have a little bit of interesting interactions. So let's say axe has this Battle Hunger there. If you cast Battle Hunger on a Nyx like this, and Nyx is running around, well, you can just wait and choose to pop Spiked Carapace until you want the axe to be stunned. So now I want axe to be stunned, and the next time I took damage, the axe is now stunned. And this can work for anything, like an ogre damage over time spell. It's kind of uncontrollable. He did cast it on you, but now it's uncontrollable because it's just ticking down. Anything like Venomancer also works, similar kind of thing. So anything where it's damage over time or AoE damage, then you can basically just use this to stun people. The other thing is we don't really have axe here. Maybe if I spawned like a Storm Spirit, you could see. But it's a very simple concept. Storm Spirit lays down a remnant. If I walk into that remnant, I will take damage. So what you can do is you can actually pop the Spiked Carapace and then walk into the remnant and purposefully try to take damage so that you can stun them. So it's a very good way to do that as well. The other thing to keep in mind is that you actually don't take the damage. So basically the instance of damage that you took, you can still get stunned. So if it's like a Lina stun AoE or some kind of Tide Ravage, you will still get stunned, but you actually reflect the damage. Well, not reflect it. It's not like Blade Mail, but you basically just don't take it. So it just negates any damage that you took. So even if it's something like, it's not a spell that is uncontrollable. Let's say somebody does cast like Finger of Death from Lion or a Lina Ultimate Laguna Blade. You can still Spike Carapace that off. Now keep in mind as well though that if, let's say, projectiles are flying at you, like there's a bunch of like right clicks coming at you, it will only reflect that first instance of damage. So if somebody gets stunned, or if it's like low level, because this is a duration of only 0.6, you will only stun them for that first duration, that first instance of damage, and then any damage you take afterwards, after that initial stun, after that initial thing that happened to you when you popped Spike Carapace, they will not get stunned for any subsequent, like followed up damage that they're doing to you when you popped Spike Carapace. So you can only stun them once, basically, per ability usage. Now, obviously it has low cooldown, so you can keep stunning them again once it's off cooldown, but they only really get stunned once. It only blocks one instance of damage, so keep that in mind. Now, lastly, we're going to take a look at his ultimate, which is Vendetta. Pretty simple ultimate, easy to understand. You basically press it, and then you go invisible, and now you can run around. You also gain some movement speed when you're invisible as well. So this helps you scout, helps you gank, helps you chase people, all those kinds of things. And then you're invisible for a pretty long duration. It's actually a very, very good duration. And at max level, it's like pretty long. Basically, this hero almost has like a permanent invisibility, basically, with this ability at max level, so it's very good. So this hero can kind of just be on the map at all times invisible and a threat, especially once he hits max level. But even level 1, like, it's still a decent duration, has less than a minute downtime if you combine it all together. So that's why this hero can really be a threat, because you can obviously run around, you're pretty fast, you can find people on the map that you want to kill. If they don't have sentries down, they're pretty much dead if you have any kind of follow-up. And then from there, when you're invisible, if you right-click somebody out of invisibility, it does a significant amount of damage. You can see how much damage it did there. That's a lot of damage. And it's pure damage as well, so keep that in mind. So it really does a ton of damage. You can kind of kill supports by yourself if you have enough farm, if you have any other kind of damage item along with that, and along with your stuns and all these other things, you can really kill people fairly quickly by yourself if you're high level and stuff on this hero. Now, the way in which all of these spells, they're all pretty good spells on their own, but the way in which they all kind of work together is also very, very good. So the thing that you can do with this hero is, one, if let's say this is cast on me and then I go invisible. Well, now I'm invisible, but I still have this AoE damage on me. I can actually press Spiked Carapace while I'm invisible with Vendetta. I don't pop out of invisibility, and I still stun them. So this is very, very good, because basically what happens is if, let's say there's that Storm Spear Q, or there's something that's happening on the map, and you're invisible and you're right there, if you predict what, that they're going to cast a spell, or you do have some kind of AoE damage over time spell on you, you can pop your Spiked Carapace while you're invisible, not revealing your positioning, and stun them before they even know you're there. And then obviously they're stunned, then you can right click them to do a ton of damage, and then you can follow up with your Impale. It's really, really good. Now keep in mind, you can't use Mana Burn while you're invisible. That actually takes you out, and you can't use your Impale either. So Impale actually takes you out of invisibility. But there is something else I wanted to mention before we're done with these abilities, is that a lot of times what people want to do, you know, people that are new to the hero or play the hero at lower MMRs or whatever, what they want to do, they always want to, you know, run in, they want to right click for a lot of damage and then stun. Well, the problem with this is, early on this might be good because people don't have BKBs, their movement speed is lower, these kinds of things. But what will happen is a lot of times is it's better, especially later, if people have BKBs, if you're trying to kill a core that has a Manta or anything like that can escape or has high movement speed. What you really want to do is a lot of times you don't even want to use this if you have follow-up from enemies. So like you're the first one there, you're scouting them out, you see them, and your teammates are coming to help you out. A lot of times it's better just to stun out of invisibility so you can guarantee the stun. Because as soon as you right-click, there is a good cast animation. It's pretty long, it's pretty lengthy. If they have any kind of mobility spell, any kind of BKB, any kind of movement speed that they can juke you with, they're going to try to do that as soon as they, you know, see that they got hit by you. And then potentially missing this spell means you will lose the kill. So a lot of times it's actually just better to use Impale right out of invisibility and not worry about getting the damage off, because especially if you have, you know, other heroes on your team about to follow up, sometimes you don't even need the damage. It's more that you need the damage when, you know, you are doing something like trying to pick someone off yourself, or you are, you know, in the fight like I talked about, and you can use Spike Carapace first, and you can follow up with damage and then Impale. You don't really need to guarantee the Impale, you know, when they're moving. You can, you know, use Impale as a follow-up stun. That's when you can use the damage. And sometimes you can even be, you know, in a fight, or you can get gone on, and then you can use Impale. You can use a Vendetta, not even for the invisibility, but just for the damage. So let's say they're going on you, you pop this, you turn around, you do that. There's other, like, you know, spells coming in from enemies or from allies, and then you can just go there and then you click them real quick and you kill them, or, you know, you do that extra damage. So keep in mind, you don't always have to use this for the invisibility. Sometimes you can just use it for the damage in the middle of a team fight if you're getting gone on or other things like that. So keep that in mind. So that's pretty much Nyx Assassin. I will briefly talk about his Ag Scepter, because I think this is one of the things that makes this hero generally good. It's not the thing, it's not like completely broken, but it is pretty good. What this does is it basically gives you another ability called Burrow. You can burrow in the ground. It's almost like a StarCraft ability, kind of like some of those StarCraft Zerg units. Basically, you put yourself in the ground. You cannot move now unless you know, unburrow yourself. And from here, you can cast all your abilities. Like your Impale is really far. You know, you have a lot more cast range on Mana Burn. All these kinds of things. You can use Spike Carapace even in the AoE, so it's really good in that way as well. And it's very good for defending high ground, for sieging high grounds even. All those different kind of things when you want to control an area, so keep that in mind. So that is his Ag's Scepter. It is pretty good. It's something that you buy a lot of times on this hero, especially because he is played forward position, and you should be getting pretty good farm with all the pickoffs you're doing and things like that. So that is Nyx Assassin. Those are all of his abilities. Now let's jump into a game and see how he's played. So now we're jumping into a replay here of Insania playing Nyx Assassin in the forward position. And kind of the first thing I wanted to show you, I usually don't show you the rune fight, but because Nyx Assassin does have a stun, and it can be potentially like an AoE stun that hits multiple heroes, this hero is a hero that you do probably want to contest the runes. He's not like the best hero ever for contesting the runes, but he is fairly decent. So you can see there, obviously he had other help with his allies coming in to help him there to get the first blood, but they do secure the first blood, which is really good for them. Now, the other kind of reason that I wanted to show you that, and I wanted to talk about the runes, is because the real strength of this hero, the only real laning strength this hero has, is his innate regen. So we can look at his stats here. We can see he has 48 damage as he's kind of laning because the OD is a little bit late. So he's not actually the off lane. He's the forward position. He's just laning because the OD was a little bit late there. But we can look at, you know, he has good armor because he's an agility hero. So he has decent armor. So it's not like he's like, you know, super squishy. But he does have a pretty low HP pool. It's not the best HP pool around, you know, 560 HP is not that great, so he does buy a good amount of regen. He also, you know, his spells are pretty expensive. He doesn't have the best mana pool because he's an agility hero, so he doesn't need to buy mangoes, but you can see that because he bought a bunch of mangoes, he has better regen than a lot of heroes. He also does have generally decent regen overall. It's kind of the strength of this hero is that he can take a lot of damage and regen up without having to spam tangos. So it's just kind of like, I think some other heroes like Ricky has good regen and things like this. He's just one of these heroes that has good regen. So that's why you kind of want to get involved, try to trade, you know, around the rune and other things like that. But if we watch him here, he doesn't like fight against this Earthshaker all that great. Like, the Earthshaker's doing way more damage to him. His attack speed's not great. Then he hits one, you know, takes one Lucent Beam and he's just like, you know, half HP almost. So I feel like there's really not too much to talk about in terms of the laning stage. You can see he's used like spells, like 2 or 3 spells. He's already out of mana. He doesn't trade very well at all. Like, all he's doing is just kind of trying to distract the Earthshaker so the Earthshaker doesn't go on the OD. He's just basically surviving, trying to stop him from pulling, trying to stop, you know, any nonsense from happening, but he doesn't really want to get too aggressive because he's just not great at trading. He's just not the best laner. So other than doing typical 4-position things, you're just going to just do, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like, you can see, he's definitely not winning this trade, but he knows that he's fast enough that he can get away. He's probably not going to die. He's kind of pushing it to the edge here, but also has a lot of regen. But it's just one of these things that he's just not going to be the best laner in general. That's just kind of how Nyx works. You kind of aren't great until you get at least 1 level in every single spell. So level 3 is maybe a timing where now you can actually get aggressive because you potentially have 2 stuns and mana burn, which is good. Or, you know, level 2 stun, whatever it is. Those kinds of things. But up until, you know, mid-game portion, he's really just doing typical support things. So I know that I'm sort of just saying the same thing over and over again, but I just kind of wanted you to watch what's happening here and that, you know, what is he really doing? He's not doing much because Nyx Assassin doesn't do much other than contribute, you know, a stun here and there, a mana burn here and there to annoy the enemy so they can't get their spells off. So that's honestly the laning stage. Try to stop the pulls. Try to pull when you can. Annoy the enemy with a stun here or there to make sure they can't go on your off lane, or maybe you can potentially get aggressive because your off laner's, you know, able to get aggressive. Annoy them with mana burn constantly so that they can't spam their spells, that kind of stuff. All those kinds of things. But you see here, he's just kind of playing back, and then as soon as the OD can get aggressive, he can get aggressive and get a kill. So it's not like this hero is completely useless. It's just that you're really dependent on your off laner to be aggressive or to know when they have a strength that you can then contribute your stun to, and other than that, you're not doing all that much other than stunning and being annoying with your mana burn. So that's the laning stage. That's Nyx's laning stage. Now let's jump forward to the mid game once he hits level 6. Now I jumped ahead to 11 minutes here, and he was just farming the mid lane because he needed to get his 6. He needed to secure his 6. So we can see as soon as he gets his Vendetta, he pops Vendetta and he runs at the puck as he has vision. He's basically going to scout the puck out, and they're going to get aggressive on the puck because puck is still only level 9, not max spells or anything like that. And you see he immediately basically solo kills the puck. Now, obviously, he gives the kill to the Ursa there at the end, because the Ursa is able to get that, which is really, really good for the Ursa. But we can see that he could have gotten another right-click in and solo killed the puck. So you can potentially do this even against mid laners as soon as you get 6. So any hero that has any kind of AoE damage, any kind of mid-hero like this that has mobility, he's just very, very good at scouting these heroes out, picking them off when they're out of position, all these kinds of things. And this is exactly what you want to do when you hit 6 on this hero. Now, obviously, once your ultimate is on cooldown, you're not really going to be able to be as aggressive. You just kind of want to back people up, potentially use your stun to help someone out if they're diving a tower, or, you know, you could get aggressive, but you're not, you know, scouting things out. You're not getting aggressive with pickoffs and that kind of stuff when you have your ultimate on cooldown. You could potentially even farm a lane that nobody else wants to go to, these kinds of things. But we can see how he's just being a little bit more passive on the map when he doesn't have his ultimate up. But then every time his ultimate is up, he's going to look to get aggressive. He's going to look to play on the enemy side of the map. He's going to look to find somebody out of position. Now, throughout this entire replay, if you wanted to watch a replay like this, the enemy is constantly grouped up together because they're scared. So we can see the whole enemy is kind of playing on the triangle. Nobody really wants to go to this part of the jungle or even to this lane. And that's largely because of the Nyx Assassin, because they know if they try to go there and the Nyx has ultimate up, he's just going to, you know, scout them out, use his abilities, and pick them off. It's pretty much that simple. So your mere presence a lot of times forces the enemy to do something or die. And what I'll say is, in these games, the enemy plays strategically to not let them die to Nyx Assassin, basically, because they know how this hero works. But in your games, I'm just going to tell you, the enemy's not going to be that smart. So you're going to be able to pick people off, group up. You're even going to be able to solo kill people with your ultimate because they're just not going to have sentries. They're not going to buy them. They're not going to put them in the lane. And they're not going to, you know, stick together like they usually should, so that you're going to have the advantage and be able to constantly snowball and pick people off with your ultimate whenever it's on cooldown, or whenever it's available and off cooldown. Now we can see here, as I've been talking now, he still has his ultimate, but there's not really a situation now where he's going to pick people off. He did get aggressive mid, but didn't need to use his ultimate. But now, as soon as the Hoodwink takes the lane, he's going to use his Vendetta and go top, try to help people, try to scout people out. But we can see, again, the enemy is really playing together. Puck and Earthshaker are playing together. The other 3 heroes are playing top. Everybody's kind of grouped together because they don't want to get picked off by Nyx Assassin. And that's what you do. That's what you force when you play this hero. So that's kind of how to play Nyx Assassin in the mid game. That's just how to think about him. Once you get your ultimate, you're just going to play for the next next 10-15 minutes, every time it's up, you're going to try to scout somebody out, try to pick them off out of position, try to scout them, try to get a good team fight or a good pick off in your favor. So that's pretty much how to play Nyx Assassin in the mid game. Now let's jump ahead and see how to team fight later on once he gets some items and levels. Now, I jumped ahead a few minutes, and they took a Roche fight. It was pretty good for them. He didn't do too much, though, so I didn't want to show you that. Like, there wasn't really much to learn about Nyx there. But after that, you know, they split up. They go farm the map, and this is what usually happens. The Luna TP's bottom, or at least runs bottom, and is farming bottom. So he's scouting out with his Vendetta to see, you know, where the enemy is. So he sees the Luna in the side lane, basically communicates to his OD, hey, come down here, we can easily kill this guy. So he's basically just on top of Luna, sees that Luna's going in the trees, waits for him to TP, uses his Vendetta to get the damage off because the Luna is TPing, so isn't going to be able to react in time, then uses the stun, and the OD comes in, follows up, and is able to clean up the kill. And this is the perfect example of how to execute a side lane gank whenever somebody is basically farming the side lane alone against the Nyx. Anytime that is happening and you're playing Nyx Assassin, you can easily pick them off with just a +1 from anybody, even 20 minutes into the game. The only thing that stops you is maybe, you know, BKB, potentially Lincoln Sphere, you know, Aeon Disc, anything like this that heroes get later in the game. But even then, if you know that they're going to do something like that, you know they're going to pop something. That's why you can use other abilities out just to immediately before or without even right-clicking them out of your Vendetta. So that's why you would use that. But this early on, he basically knew that he was going to be able to secure that kill on the Luna there with the +1 from the OD, and that's the perfect example of how to execute a gank in the side lane like that. Now, I only briefly jumped ahead here, and I just wanted to kind of show you this brief team fight. Unfortunately, there's not a really great way to show you. He doesn't really do it very often where he, like, preemptively hits Spike Carapace to stun somebody, so unfortunately I'm not going to show you that, but you can just understand how that works. But you can see how aggressive he's being. Ursa is obviously a super aggressive hero, very hard to kill. He has Aegis, and you can see that he is being even more aggressive than the Ursa. And even though he dies here, obviously what happened is that the enemy committed so much to kill him that they put themselves out of position because he's a very difficult hero to kill. He has a lot of defensive capabilities, whether it's the invisibility from Vendetta or whether it's the Spike Carapace. You basically have to commit that silence from Puck in order to kill him full to 0. And we can see basically because of that, because of the way he played super aggressive in the fight, even though he didn't have his Vendetta up, he was able to secure, you know, the enemy wasted a ton on him as the forward position, and then his team was able to clean up. And so obviously I don't want you to put yourself out of position, you know, and just feed with Nyx, but I do want to, like, let you know that you should be super aggressive with this hero because he is hard to bring down. You can obviously counter stuns and things like that with the hero. You just want to be aggressive on the hero, even if you don't have your Vendetta up. And then obviously if you do have your Vendetta up, you want to be scouting out a ton. You just want to be up in the face of the enemy, constantly scouting people out, constantly in the back lines picking off supports, or you know, stunning the correct heroes, stunning heroes out of invisibility to catch them off guard, to chain stun them, all these kinds of things. It's the perfect way to understand how to play this hero in team fights, because that's the very, very good strength. If you're just sitting in the back like normal supports on this hero, or other supports on this hero, you're just not that great, because all you're offering then, you're just offering, you know, some mana burn and some impale stuns when they're off cooldown, and that's all you're offering. But when you're up in the fight, you're stunning people with Carapace, you're being a nuisance, you know, you're potentially even right-clicking people, you're just forcing them to focus you or do something about you, otherwise you're going to be extremely annoying over and over and over again with all of your spells. And so that's the perfect way to play Nyx Assassin. That's how to think about Nyx Assassin in general. And the only real thing that I haven't showed you in this game is basically his preemptive Spike Carapace. Sometime that it works, but like right there, you can see he preemptively Spike Carapace and went in, and that's basically what you want to do. Now, obviously, the enemy's good enough that they didn't cast the spell on them because they know that that's what's going to happen. But that's just how you use the hero. You can just Spike Carapace, walk in, they're going to hit you, they're going to do it, and then they will die and they'll get stunned and these kinds of things. The other thing is I didn't really get to show you in this game, you know, using an Agnum Scepter, but it's not something you're going to get every game. I wouldn't really focus on that. It's just something that you want to position yourself in a certain way, you know, right outside the tower range, these kinds of things, in a way that you can siege or defend high ground. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So that is my Nyx Assassin guide, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helps you play this hero. He's a pretty fun hero, very annoying to play against though, and has a lot of different strengths and can be very fun to just, you know, constantly pick people off and snowball and all those kinds of things. So that's my Nyx Assassin guide. I hope it helps everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. Consider joining my Patreon and helping me, you know, continue to do content like this. If you want coaching, that's at the Patreon as well. Join the Discord if you haven't already. We have a community there talking all the time about Dota. If you want help, you know, with advice or things like that, someone to look at a replay, you can also go there to request a replay, and I will do that for you when I stream. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.